Where will Jamaica be in 2030?
I have a vision of what we can be. Come with me and you will see. Come with me and you will see.
Vision 2030 Jamaica, the national development plan to make it happen.
It's what Jamaica needs to do
to grow, to mature,
and to become a developed country.
Get for you, so we have to shine, show them what we can do.
Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their fullest potential.
The Jamaican society is secure, cohesive, and just.
Jamaica's economy is prosperous.
Jamaica has a healthy, natural environment.
How we can make sure it's not just a bag of mouth?
We set a target and we keep close track of the activities to make sure we meet it.
Jamaica, the place of choice to live, work, raise families.
Welcome to beautiful Jamaica. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Darian Henry, coming to you live, and I'll be moderating today's event. For over 45 years, the European Union and the government of Jamaica have been working in partnership. Today, we will explore their joint work in the area of inclusive and sustainable people development and community development. And you, our audience, will get an opportunity to participate in the discussion through our poll and question and answer, which we will tell you more about later. Right now, I invite you to listen to the national anthem of Jamaica and that of the European Union, which will be followed immediately by a prayer done by Dr. Lawrence Nicholson, who wears many hats. But today, he joins us in his role as chairperson of the steering committee for the European Union Government of Jamaica's Poverty Reduction Program.
Lord God, we come this morning in recognition of you being God, in recognition of the fact that you have allowed us to work together as people, no matter our location, no matter from where we have come, no matter the country. You have placed us, Lord, as a team to work to the benefit of those who need intervention. And we come this morning, God, to thank you for this occasion. Thank you for the contribution of the European Union over the years in contributing to development of different peoples, different nations. We thank you for the willingness of the government of Jamaica to be involved with the collaboration or in collaboration with the EU. We thank you for those who have been active players, for JSIF and all the other contributors. We thank you, Lord, even for this occasion to which you have called us to, Lord God, to discuss and to reflect and to talk about all the things that we need to do for the benefit of those who need help. And we pray even now that as the proceedings will go, that your blessing will be on this and all will go well according to your will. And so direct according to your blessing, direct according to your will, and cause that at the end of this, that we'll all collectively and individually to say that it was good for us, all of us, to have been involved. So continue to add your blessing. We pray, giving you thanks in the name that we know, the name of Jesus. Amen.
Welcome back, and thanks, Dr. Nicholson. In today's lineup, we'll be hearing from the EU Commissioner. We'll also be having conversations with Dr. Wayne Henry, Mr. Omar Sweeney, and Mr. Charles Clayton. Our keynote address will be coming from Mr. Ronald Jackson, and we'll also be launching the Community Renewal Index. You are invited to participate in the activities by responding to 2 poll questions and also submit your questions on any areas that you might need clarification or more information. The poll questions and the chat for submitting your questions may be found by clicking on the icons on the top right-hand corner of your laptop screen. The results of the polls and the responses to the questions will take place at the end of today's presentations. We will now open our first poll, which you can now see on your screen. The poll will be available until 11 a.m., so please be sure to submit your responses by then. To respond, click on the poll icon on the right-hand corner of your laptop or mobile device and select the appropriate answer by clicking on it. The second poll question will be available immediately after until about 12:15 p.m. Also, feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation. Coming up, we'll be hearing from the EU Ambassador to Jamaica, Her Excellency Marion Van Steen. However, before we hear from her, let's take a look at a short video with some of the work that has been done through the partnership between the European Union and the government of Jamaica over the years.
Making a difference in people's lives. The European Union, the world's largest development aid donor, is a trusted partner in the Caribbean. The EU delegation based in Jamaica covers Jamaica, Belize, the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands, and Turks and Caicos Islands. The EU cooperation with partner countries pursues the global objective of poverty reduction and sustainable development based on the principles of our ACP-EU partnership and the country's national development plan.
We as European Union never choose the priorities for our assistance and our support by ourselves. It is always in conversation with the government.
The European Union remains a steady and present partner. Since 1975, the EU has channeled over €1 billion in development assistance to Jamaica. The Poverty Reduction Program, PRP, in Jamaica focuses on improving the socio-economic conditions in 65 poor and vulnerable communities. It works to empower residents to achieve their fullest potential.
I received a tertiary scholarship from PRP to attend the University of Technology, Jamaica. It meant a lot to me because I realized that somebody else believed in me and somebody saw the potential that I have.
In a clear manifestation of its commitment to ending domestic violence and to multilateralism, the EU has joined forces with it to launch the Spotlight Initiative. In Jamaica, it is providing support to address the problem of violence against women and girls.
With a total of 50 million euros allocated to address family violence across the Caribbean, Spotlight Initiative demonstrates just how serious we are about our partnership with the region and protecting the rights of the people of the Caribbean.
The EU is helping Jamaica to modernize its justice system and improve access to justice to all Jamaicans through an investment of 24 million euros, or just over 3 billion Jamaican dollars. The EU further advocates for justice by helping to strengthen civil society organizations that work to promote the rule of law and improvements in the quality of service delivery, especially for vulnerable citizens. Additional funding has been secured for citizen security in Jamaica, with a measurable plan to address and integrate the most vulnerable and violent communities. The signing of a national consensus on crime in 2020 was a welcome step towards addressing the stifling problem of crime in Jamaica.
Through a grant of 22 million euro, since 2013 we have been supporting the government of Jamaica to address some of the major health challenges affecting child and maternal health in several ways. I am very proud to say that PROMAC is the first major EU-funded project in Jamaica that focuses on health sector and specifically on maternal health.
The EU's recent donation of 29 ventilators to Jamaica's health system demonstrates yet again the Union's enduring commitment to the partnership and solidarity with Jamaica at this challenging time.
With the COVID-19 crisis, the EU has decided to immediately reorient its assistance programs as part of its support to fight the disease. The EU, in partnership with the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPH, has mobilized 8 million euros in managing the fight against COVID-19. Jamaica is a beneficiary of this support. Climate change is an existential threat facing the world today. The EU is helping Jamaica address the challenges posed by climate change, disasters caused by natural hazards, and degradation brought on by human activity through implementation of Jamaica's forest policy.
The forest means everything. It means life. It means existence.
Through our support to this forestry sector, we strive to help the government to find better initiatives for management, for preservation of the biodiversity of Jamaican environments.
Under the banana accompanying measures, the EU partnered with the government of Jamaica to reduce poverty and improve the living standards of workers and their families in the banana-producing areas. Jamaica has also benefited from funding provided by the EU for sugar-dependent areas under the accompanying measures for sugar.
I received $1 million and it makes me into a woman that I am today.
The condition of the barracks were completely rough. We never have a house like this. We have it now.
Public finance management is a priority for Jamaica. Our support seeks to build the institutional structures and systems to facilitate the creation and implementation of a modern, integrated financial management system. This will foster transparency and accountability of fiscal governance in Jamaica.
The EU stands and will continue to stand firm in its solidarity with Jamaica and Belize. We're fully committed to strengthen our relations and to intensify our cooperation, even more so now in COVID times. I would like to congratulate in particular my predecessor, Ambassador Wasilewska, for the excellent work she's done over the last 4 years. And I feel it as a duty, as my task, to continue to build on the foundation she laid in order to strengthen multilateralism, which is our joint ambition, but also to intensify our cooperation to tackle local priorities. Because we know if we work together, we get much further.
Powerful indeed. We're going to be hearing now from the EU Ambassador to Jamaica, Her Excellency Marion Van Steen. She's no stranger to the Americas. She just completed a highly successful 4-year term as EU Ambassador to Ecuador. She has over 25 years of experience in diplomacy and international development within the European Union. We now hear from Ambassador Van Steen.
Good morning. I'm delighted to welcome you, our global audience, to today's discussion on people-centered development. Building a fairer and more stable world by improving people's quality of life with a focus on the most vulnerable is at the heart of the European Union's commitment to supporting efforts to eradicate poverty. This is why, globally, we focus our assistance on human rights, democracy, and other aspects of good governance, as well as on inclusive and sustainable development, to help create growth in developing countries, so poor people can be assisted to lift themselves out of poverty. Here in Jamaica, our flagship Poverty Reduction Program, which is aligned to Jamaica's National Development Plan, embodies these priorities. The program's people-centered approach ensures beneficiaries' participation in the identification, choice, and implementation of project activities. Under the leadership of the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Jamaica Social Investment Fund steers the day-to-day operations of the program and has done so successfully over these past 2 decades. The PRP promotes social cohesion and participatory development. Its activities emphasize the strengthening of community decision-making structures and foster communication to build partnerships among different groups, including residents, civil society organizations, national and local authorities. This approach has served to empower beneficiaries to be the drivers of their own development. We are proud of the achievements of this program. For example, the work we did with community-based organizations to help them to better advocate and plan for local development projects. During the period 2018-2020, the PRP undertook a capacity needs assessment of 64 community-based organizations, comprising 142 individuals, 79 females and 69 males. And based on the results of the assessments, tailored training was provided in the priorities of resource mobilization and proposal writing, financial management, administration and human resources management, project design and management, governance, communication, violence prevention, and networking and advocacy. Following those trainings, several of the grassroots organizations were assisted with grant funding to implement and manage initiatives which they themselves define as beneficial for their communities. Importantly, the experience gained through this process equip these community groups with the skills to access other sources of funding and other types of assistance from within and from outside the community borders. The European Union is deliberate about ensuring that resources are maximized for the benefit of the people. Among other things, we do this by using what we call the results-based management approach. The European Union's results framework is aligned to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and is the tool used to track the EU's contribution to the progress of partner countries towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The framework enhances accountability and transparency of the European Union's international cooperation activities. It informs management decisions, promotes learning at all levels, and serves as the basis for our results reporting exercises. As Jamaica's results framework is also aligned with the SDGs, there's coherence between both Jamaica and the European Union's approach to managing for results. When Jamaica established a specific strategy for the development of poor and vulnerable communities, the European Union was the first on board to support the related coordination mechanism. We provided support for the development of a multi-year strategic implementation plan, a monitoring and evaluation framework, as well as a related database through our Poverty Reduction Program. Effective coordination is a key success factor in ensuring that initiatives are delivering intended benefits. And it's therefore imperative for these elements to be costed, budgeted, and mainstreamed into policy planning and implementation. Let me stress here that at the end of the day, creating meaningful impact on people's lives and livelihoods is the main aim of our collaboration in Jamaica. Today, we pause to reflect on some of the lessons learned over the years and through the PRP experience. It's a pivotal time for us to have this reflection, particularly as we navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and assess its impact on the most vulnerable. As a world, we must rely more and more on what has worked well and seek to build on these strengths as part of wider efforts to hold the slides in the progress that have been made prior to the pandemic. At the same time, it's imperative to seize and maximize new and emerging opportunities in order to be fit for purpose in this new era. A robust results management framework provides evidence-based information that strengthens this process. And this is why I am particularly pleased that along with all the people who have benefited from the poverty reduction program, we will leave a lasting legacy in terms of the program's contribution to Jamaica's national coordination mechanism for the most vulnerable. I'm truly excited about the launch of Jamaica's Community Renewal Index, which is coming up later in today's program. It is a promising instrument in Jamaica's toolkit as the country is striving for enhanced evidence-based planning and resource allocation in favor of poor and vulnerable communities in this pandemic area and beyond. I know the ensuing discussions will be rich and will add value as we move towards the goal of sustainable development that we have desired. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Ambassador. We now turn our attention to our first conversation with Dr. Wayne Henry. Dr. Henry is the Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica. That's the agency leading the process of policy formulation on economic, social, and environmental issues, as well as external corporations management. Today, we're going to be discussing the role of the PIOJ in creating an enabling environment for national development planning. And also, that should be underpinned by results-based management and people-centered principles. Dr. Henry, let me first ask you, what is the role of the PIOJ in facilitating partnerships to promote inclusive people-centered development?
People-centered development means empowering local communities through a bottom-up rather than top-down development approach. Recognizing the importance of this for sustainability, inclusiveness, local partnership, capacity building, ownership, the PIOJ has adopted and promoted these core principles in the development of plans, policies, programs, and partnerships.
Tell me a little bit more about how the PIOJ is fulfilling its mandate.
The Vision 2030 Jamaica National Development Plan is an example of the fulfillment of this role. It is underpinned by 8 guiding principles that are people-centered and include equity, social cohesion, partnerships, sustainable urban and rural development, transformational leadership, transparency and accountability, and sustainability. That's economic, social, and environmental. This is further evident in the framework and mechanisms the PIOJ provides for state and non-state actors across different sectors and levels to design, implement, monitor, and evaluate plans, policies, programs, and projects in a participatory way.
How do you ensure that partnerships with Jamaica's international development partners promote this people-centered development approach?
As Jamaica's interlocutor with international development partners, the PIOJ is able to mobilize partnerships and resources, as well as provide strategic advice and guidance that promote participatory development. In this way, we can ensure that our people's voices are heard in the development decisions that may affect them, and development interventions are appropriate to their needs and preferences.
How has the use of the RBM approach helped to shape the policy framework and the environment for the achievement of these development outcomes?
Vision 2030 Jamaica, the National Development Plan, provides a policy framework for Jamaica to achieve developed country status by 2030. It was therefore very important from the outset to adopt a results-based approach to its development, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, especially since it is a long-term development plan. The deliberate integration of the tenets of RBM, plan, do, check, act, into the design and implementation of the plan is intended to create the enabling environment for the achievement of our 15 national outcomes.
Dr. Henry, you just made reference to the tenets of the RBM, but let me ask you, how are these principles evident in Jamaica's national development planning as well as the implementation processes?
Firstly, in the plan phase, the National Development Plan provides the roadmap for the realization of Vision 2030 in Jamaica, the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business, and includes a suite of national strategies and sector plans as part of a broad framework for results-oriented planning to address key development challenges. The plan phase also included a results-based M&E framework and plan, which has allowed us to track the national outcome indicators and generate the evidence we need to make improvements. In the do, that's the implement phase, the medium-term socioeconomic development framework, the MTF, is a policy-based framework for the implementation of the National Development Plan and spans 3-year cycles. Its development is informed by empirical data with a focus on managing for results through adjusting implementation, strategy development and improvement, allocation and reallocation of resources, and reprioritization. The framework involves partnerships with various actors that implement and align to the MTF, and the M&E framework is a critical part of this mechanism.
As you're aware, Dr. Henry, monitoring and evaluation is a key element of the national development process. But let me ask you, how do you ensure that it's results focused and that the data is used in a strategic way?
As a key element of the national development process, monitoring and evaluation provides us with the means and opportunity to ensure that we remain results focused and results driven. Monitoring occurs during the MTF implementation and tracks progress towards intended results. Results-based reports are produced and disseminated annually and at the end of each MTF cycle with a view to promoting improvements in plans, policies, and programs and the projects of MDAs. Policy and program evaluations are the remit of MDAs, and the use of the findings and recommendations is promoted by the PIOJ Vision 2030 Jamaica. In addition, to increase the likelihood of achieving Vision 2030 Jamaica, empirical data is an integral feature of continuous improvement. Programmatic gaps and funding gaps and the underlying causes help to identify priorities. Lessons learned provide opportunities for improving plans, policies, and programs. Each successive MTF is informed by this process of checking and then acting.
Just before I wrap up, Dr. Henry, let me ask you this final question. What would you say are some of the main challenges, some of the main gaps and opportunities for integrating this RBM into the development ecosystem?
Public sector reforms over the last decade have sought to improve accountability and transparency through the integration and mainstreaming of the RBM approach. Initiatives include the introduction of results-based budgeting and a performance monitoring and evaluation system. Some of the key success factors required for successful RBM implementation include a strong M&E culture and mindset, the existence of competent, capable, and motivated M&E staff, M&E champions or power brokers, supportive leadership, reliable M&E infrastructure, including technological tools and database, sustainable domestic funding, and a strong governance mechanism. However, we are lacking, of course, in some of these areas. The opportunity exists to leverage the increasing demand for performance and results by investing in a nationally owned and managed M&E system, prioritizing evaluations as a means of providing evidence of what is working or not working, and developing the institutional and organizational capacity for RBM. By strengthening the infrastructure for the proper integration of RBM into development planning and M&E processes, we are likely to have more effective policies, programs, and resource allocations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wayne Henry, the Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica, talking there about the role of the PIOJ in creating an environment that facilitates results-based management and people-centered principles. Let's now hear from 3 practitioners and how they think that there are some of the benefits of policymakers and community residents to this particular approach. Joining us now are Ms. Rian Holder of JSIF, Mrs. Marlene Lamont from the delegation of the European Union, and Mrs. Marsha Watson-Hilton of the PIOJ.
Utilizing a team-based approach incorporates different perspectives and allows for holistic and impact-driven projects that draw on the pooled skills of professionals from various disciplines. This is demonstrated in our organization, as within the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, teams include specialists in social development, such as psychologists and social workers, the construction industry, such as quantity surveyors, architects, and engineers, finance and procurement specialists, and monitoring and evaluation experts. We also draw on the strengths of our partners from government institutions, civil society, and the private sector to develop and implement project ideas in tandem with community stakeholders. This approach ensures that our efforts are unified or at least complementary as we jointly work towards achieving Jamaica's national development goals. And similarly, while monitoring and evaluation of project interventions may be done jointly or individually, the lessons learned and results gained are shared through various channels, including reports, seminars, working groups, and events such as this.
Policymakers, civil society, and community residents are all critical stakeholders in community development initiatives. Strategies which allow meaningful collaboration between all 3 actors, from program identification through to implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, facilitate ownership, transparency, accountability, and contribute towards achieving related national goals. This approach promotes inclusive people development with inherent multiplier effects. Using the European Union Government of Jamaica's Poverty Reduction Program, which is implemented by the Jamaica Social Investment Fund as an example, the program, which is aligned to Jamaica's National Development Plan, funds activities based on community development plans where they are in place. In the absence of detailed community development plans, project proposals are identified and prioritized by community-based organizations or community development committees in collaboration with the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Social Development Commission, the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, and the related ministries in the case of social enterprises, schools, community health centers, roads, and police stations. With this example, it may be seen that participatory approaches benefit policy development and implementation, as it facilitates incorporating local knowledge and skills and optimizes resource allocation. At the same time, community residents benefit by having an enhanced ability to advocate for community needs and to collaborate with internal and external actors to mobilize and pool resources to address community development needs.
Results-based management focuses on results and impacts. While the potential success of an intervention is determined by its merit, it is its worth and significance to its beneficiaries, to communities, that determines its ultimate success. At the heart of all development efforts are those who are directly and indirectly impacted by social, economic, and environmental challenges. Our men, women, youth, children, the elderly, the most vulnerable. The results-based management approach ensures that the focus is on results. The changes in the knowledge, attitudes, skills, capacities, and conditions of these beneficiaries from project inception to close out and beyond. Therefore, the integration of this approach into community development initiatives ensures that results are demand-driven and relevant. This focus on results ensures that changes in the lives and well-being of these beneficiaries are prioritized and monitored continuously for its positive and negative effects, intended and unintended outcomes. For policymakers, the tenets of the results-based management approach, plan, do, check, act, help to orient all actions and use of resources towards achieving clearly defined and demonstrable results. It ensures that improvements are made to the design and implementation of interventions to ensure that the intended outcomes are achieved and sustained. Very importantly, it allows for the capitalization of experiences and lessons learned that can be used to strengthen public policies and scale up good practices. When policymakers are able to access evidence of what works and does not work, it augurs well for better policymaking, better programs, better resource allocation, and increases transparency and accountability, which are critical for good governance.
And now we're going to get ready for the second conversation. We're going to be taking a closer look at the European Union Government of Jamaica partnership with community residents in their own development through its poverty reduction program, which was implemented by the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, which is headed by Mr. Omar Sweeney, and Mr. Charles Clayton, the director of the CRP. Gentlemen, good morning.
Morning.
Let me ask you, Mr. Sweeney, how does the JSIF operationalize the initiatives such as the poverty reduction program to ensure inclusive people-centered development?
Well, certainly since our inception, we have been focused on ensuring that communities are at the center of whatever we do. And the partnership with the European Union played a big role in developing our systems and processes towards consulting with communities, developing our plans with the communities, ensuring that they participate, and also ultimately benefit from the interventions. And in previous parlance, we would call that bottoms-up approach. Now we call it more the inclusive approach. And certainly over the years, we've invested much of the resources in developing the capacity of communities to the point where they are now legal entities, they are engaged with other government stakeholders, and of course they provide anything from 0 to 25% of sweat equity contribution.
Based on your experience, what would be some of the factors that would result in the optimization of this people-centered development?
Well, some of the factors really have a lot to do with the capacity of the community and persons in the community. The truth is that communities are well geared and know the things that they need to address more than anyone else from outside the community. And so being able to go in and consult and work with them and also give them the capacity from the point of view of managing projects, raising funds, implementing projects, managing stakeholders within the community. These are all things that are a part of natural everyday life. And so a big part of our partnership with the European Union has been about really integrating community actors as a part of the process of their own development.
Talk to me, just before I go to Mr. Clayton, talk to me about the importance of monitoring and evaluation in that mix of people-centered development initiatives.
Very important, and monitoring and evaluation allows you to exactly fit for purpose the intervention that you may be doing. And so sometimes we only want to analyze or evaluate when we fail, but we also should evaluate when we succeed so that we know what to continue doing, what to do more of. And so it's a big part of what we do in terms of targeting the interventions, if you want to say right purpose in the intervention, and also looking towards what are the interventions that we should apply in new communities.
So Clayton, let me turn the spotlight to you, literally. What's the importance of the national coordinating mechanism in the mix of people-centered development?
In the past, community development has been hindered by a siloed approach, which has prevented optimization of the kinds of results that you want, and also has prevented proper targeting of the things that need to be done and in the spaces where you need to work. Coordination brings the capacity for agencies to work together and to find a more integrated approach in how they tackle the community problems, which is essential to success.
How has the EU support to the CRP Secretariat helped to strengthen its capacity to coordinate the implementation and so on?
The development of the appropriate tools for coordination is essential if it must be effective. And some of the tools that you would need are mechanisms for bringing agencies together, for measurement, for data sharing, and for monitoring and evaluation. And the EU has been very critical in giving the kind of support that has allowed us to develop first a strategic plan with a robust monitoring and evaluation framework with clear indicators and targets. And it has also assisted us in developing additional tools, such as you'll hear more about the Community Readiness Index, Renewal Index rather, and a database. If you have information sharing, but you have no capacity to store information and process information, then that information passes in and out. The funding from the EU has facilitated us being able to develop a database which will allow data sharing and data storage and data processing that we can monitor and evaluate.
What are some of the lessons learned really about implementing a national coordinating mechanism, particularly in delivering interventions in volatile communities?
There has to be, I think, 4 things I would speak of. One is consensus. You have to have a process of consensus building. You can't be a coercive mechanism that tries to pull people together. But when people believe in a common objective and they agree on things that need to be done, then collaboration becomes intuitive. It's no longer something that's external to the way we operate. The second thing is that there has to be openness to information sharing. Without information sharing, there can be no proper coordination and there can be no proper development of appropriate mechanisms. So there must be some openness to that, notwithstanding the need for agency privacy. The third thing I would say is that there must be a participatory approach towards the way things are done. When you develop the goals and the objectives, if there's not agreement on what needs to be targeted, and that if people don't feel a part of the process of development of these things that we're targeting, then it simply means that they will not be won over to the process at all. So there must be this participatory approach, and then there must be goal setting where we all agree on particular goals that need to be achieved so that we can better see how our collaboration will work towards the achievement of that.
Mr. Sweeney, JSIF has been around for about 20 years. You have been involved, 25, yes. What would you say would be a standout over the last 25 years of the work of JSIF?
Well, certainly in the context of what we're speaking about today, what stands out for me the most is a number of CDCs or community groups that we've managed to make legal entities, working with the Department of Cooperative and Friendly Societies. I estimate that we've done more than 60 CDCs in terms of making them accountable, making them having the fiduciary responsibility to manage their affairs and the ability to seek funding from other sources, right? Because it can't be the case that there's one source continuing to fund communities. Right. And so that to me is the ultimate in terms of capacity building and participation of a community and allowing them to really control their own destiny and development.
My final question and my final thought, and both of you can have it as well, the overarching role of monitoring and evaluation where people is at the center of development. Your final thoughts?
I'll make sure.
You want to go Mr. Clayton and then Mr. Sweeney? Go ahead, Mr. Sweeney.
Well, if you don't know what impact your activities is having, whether it's properly targeted, whether it is properly effectively implemented, you will not know what is the usefulness of what you're doing. You will not also know in the feedback loop how to adjust your programs to meet the needs that you're trying to target.
Am I hearing sustainability in the mix of that?
Sustainability, definitely. Sustainability of the outcomes. Even if it's a short-term program, the outcomes cannot be sustained if you don't properly target and you don't understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. And you're not seeing whether or not your activities are getting where you want to go. So, sorry.
No, man, go ahead.
No, so I'm saying some monitoring and evaluation gives you that feedback loop that allows you to be able to do that.
Mr. Sweeney?
Well, you know, certainly as I share the stage with my colleague here, I think alignment is important. And I mean, later on this afternoon, there will be some more talk about alignment. But
and when you talk about alignment of people, alignment of community,
it's the alignment of the programs, the community, and the development actions that are required to get to the outcome. And the fact that we need to have an alignment to ensure there's no replication, things are not falling through the gaps. And so this sort of wider framework of monitoring and evaluation and being able to track communities' development as we go, because a big point I wanted to make is that it's intuitive for us to think that community development happens along a straight line continuum. It actually happens more like this. And so you really do have to understand, if you're in a recession, that you are actually still moving forward. And so these are the tools that we need to really enable us.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much, Mr. Omar Sweeney. From JSIF, Mr. Charles Clayton, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, we're going to be hearing from some young persons who have benefited from this people-centered approach through the EU Government of Jamaica Poverty Reduction Program Scholarship and Internship initiatives implemented by, of course, JSIF. In their own words, you will hear why they chose to participate in the PRP and what this could mean for their own contribution to other persons, and by extension, the country, as they facilitate into becoming productive citizens.
I wanted to be an educator because I believe that education is the most powerful weapon that can change the world.
My dreams and aspiration is to one day become an entrepreneur where I can employ other persons and help to build the country.
I wanted to go into development. I wanted to help people become better versions of themselves.
And now we're going to be hearing from today's keynote speaker, Mr. Ronald Jackson. But before he speaks to us, let's hear a little bit about him. Mr. Ronald Jackson is the head of the UNDP Disaster Risk Reduction and Recovery Team in Switzerland. Ronald Jackson is a member of both the Crisis Bureau Senior Management Team and the GPN Management Team. His appointment on May 1, 2020 follows 7 years of experience as Executive Director of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA. Under his stewardship, the agency gained further recognition and prominence throughout the Caribbean and globally as one of the foremost regional disaster risk management institution as a preferred partner for a safe and more resilient Caribbean. We now hear from Mr. Ronald Jackson.
Dr. Wayne Henry, Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica, Mr. Omar Sweeney, Managing Director of the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, Mr. Charles Clayton, Program Manager of the Community Renewal Program, Mrs. Marshall Watson Hilton, Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist, distinguished representatives of the Government of Jamaica, Excellency Marian Van Steen, Ambassador and Head of the Delegation to the European Union, Mr. Darian Henry, our Moderator, distinguished participants, good morning to you all. Let me first thank the organizing team for considering me for this honor to offer keynote remarks. I'm indeed humbled by this gesture. I also want to use this opportunity to commend the program partners for the conceptualization and rolling out of the Community Renewal Program to address the challenges in communities seen as most volatile, vulnerable, and at risk of being left behind. More importantly, I commend two aspects in particular. The approach to examine overall program impact by consolidating the support across several communities, and two, the development of a monitoring system that is fit for purpose with the right set of tools and indicators to provide for an informed approach to decision making and lesson learning. These approaches will be of critical import as we grapple with the systemic and interconnected nature of the challenges facing Jamaica's efforts to attain and sustain development country status. In the words of philanthropist and African businessman, Mr. Tony Elinelli, let us remind ourselves of the power of individuals and what potent capacities and opportunities lie in this. As I sat to consider the topic of people-centered policy planning and implementation in developing countries, key principles in the managing for results and impact, it occurred to me that the starting point of my offering to you this morning was to first establish a shared appreciation of the jargon, that of people-centered policy planning, so that we could not be guilty of simply assimilating and repeating terms that are popular within our communities of practice without the understanding of the implication of these terms. So allow me then to offer the following definition. People-centered development is an approach to international development that focuses on improving local communities' self-reliance, social justice, and anticipatory decision-making. It recognizes that economic growth does not inherently contribute to human development and calls for changes in social, political, and environmental values and practices. The key message is that people's well-being and their quality of life are to be seen as the most important measure of whether development is successful. The concept of people-centered development gained recognition at several international development conferences in the 1990s. The concept was first widely promoted in the UNDP's Human Development Report of 1990, which countries' level of development was measured by the Human Development Index, a practice which continues today. My own personal grounding of this concept has been forged throughout my entire training and professional development. First, my background as an urban and rural planner, from learning to practice, took me through the appreciation that good, and some will say, sustainable development could not be gained from approaches focused only on economic principles, with people and social considerations at the center of the process. That was about expanding the choices available to people so that they could live valuable lives with economic growth, serving as a means for enlarging those life choices. It was about ensuring that people had access to basic services and that they had agency in the development process. Without these basic fundamentals, then the very development sought would be at best fragile. More importantly, as a development planner, I recognize that multidimensional challenges to development needed to be met with multidimensional solutions involving several stakeholders, including the people who themselves needed to access the benefits of development, and more importantly, contribute to the development process. The second leg of my professional journey brought familiarity with the phrase, what gets measured, gets done. In my time at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, I noted that we had taken on a responsibility beyond the scope and capacity of the agency's mandate and resources. Some would say a necessary first step to awaken the consciousness of the government, public sector by and large, the private sector, and the population as a whole of their respective roles in advancing a prospective, a corrective, a reactive, and compensatory approach to the management of risk inherent in their development decisions. We diverted some of our efforts to better frame this complex relationship into theories of change as a means of coming up with a simplified way of understanding cause and effect, and therefore identifying the key actors who are at stake in the process towards reducing Jamaica's vulnerability. My early appreciation for results-based management, or RBM as we refer to it, for managing for results and impact was emerging. Ladies and gentlemen, the RBM approach sets a foundation for integrated planning, budgeting, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting against progress. It allows all actors contributing directly or indirectly to achieving a set of results to orient their processes, products, and services towards the achievement of the desired result, what I like to call the future desired state. The actors in turn would benefit from information and evidence being generated throughout the process in order to inform decision-making on the efficacy of the current design, the resourcing and delivery of programs and activities, and to promote accountability and transparency, essentially allowing for occasional course-correcting on the journey. The intersection between people-centered policy planning and implementation on the one hand, and management for results and impact on the other, came together quite concretely for me when I joined the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency and led the development and rollout of the third iteration of the Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy, which was aimed at achieving safer, more resilient, and sustainable Caribbean states through the application of comprehensive disaster management. It is here that the concept of people-centered policy planning and implementation through the principles of managing for results really began to take shape, meaning and importance. This was where the two intersected in practice for me. The delivery of this strategic framework depended on a diverse set of partners ranging from regional intergovernmental organizations, international organizations, donors, governments, international financial institutions, the private sector, civil society, and the people themselves. One of the big lessons from the implementation of the previous two iterations of the strategy was the need to have a strong monitoring framework with baselines, targets, and a robust monitoring platform complete with assessment tools containing a clear set of indices to measure progress towards achieving defined standards. The learning harvested from the past implementation period signaled to us that an RBM approach offered a potential for enhancing development cooperation with a clear focus on the measurement of changes at the beneficiary level. And for us, the beneficiary level would be our member governments, while our member governments in turn were required to likewise adopt and report on the same indicators, which meant that they would be measuring changes at the local level, ultimately driving a shift in the paradigm towards a people-centered approach. Over the years, the practice of disaster management recognized that risk was socially constructed and that the key drivers, namely inequalities, poverty, limited access to services, low education attainment, marginalization, and exclusion, made people vulnerable and placed them at the front line of catastrophe. Investments must therefore be targeted at making the social, economic, and physical systems more resilient, essentially increasing the life chances of people and removing them from the front line of the negative consequences of the collision between bad development and the hazard. With this understanding, the comprehensive disaster management strategy for the Caribbean featured a particular result area focused on enhancing community resilience, identifying vulnerable and at-risk communities and working with them to build their coping and adaptive and transformative capacity within and as part of a system. Hence, the strategy was indeed people-centered. In delivering previous two iterations of the strategy, we recognized that there was a need to identify, track, and account for all key actors and their investment linked to each of the respective priority areas within the strategy. We had little intelligence on who was doing what, when, and where, and what results were being achieved, or whether these results were leading to meaningful changes. To address the gaps identified, we designed a new strategy with the accompanying platforms for engagement, coordination, and reporting. This included key sector committees of education, finance, and economics, tourism, donor coordination, health, civil society, and also a coordination and harmonization council, which facilitated the leaders, space for the leaders of the different sector coordinating groups to further examine opportunities for synergy and harmonized financing and reporting. These were later complemented with investments in capacity building for national government and regional intergovernmental organizations' focal points, and the results-based management policy as a means of securing institutional buy-in of the key stakeholders. The final piece was the development of the Comprehensive Disaster Management Monitor, the CDM Monitor as we call it, an online monitoring and reporting platform which supported our biennial reporting on progress in the implementation of the strategy towards 2024. It was clearly being recognized that results-based management was not a tool, it was a mindset change, a way of working that goes beyond processes, activities, products, and services, focus on actual social and economic benefits of policies, projects, and programs at the level of the beneficiaries. Therefore, the paradigm shift inherent in the results-based management approach was to keep the focus on positive development changes we wanted to see in society and at the individual level. This sharpened our regional conversations on whether the policies for reducing risk and delivering resilience were improving lives and well-being of the Caribbean people. It allowed us to ask ourselves, not just as an institution, but as a Caribbean community, what was working well and what was not, and to look for the evidence around these changes. It essentially served as a process that focused our minds and efforts and resources towards the changes necessary to achieve a shared future desired state. Whilst there was a clear recognition that we were ahead of the curve regionally, including ahead of the transformation within the public sector across the Caribbean to a results-based management culture, we were well aware that there was still a distance to travel in the process. The journey had no doubt provided some key lessons, namely that building a shared ownership in the monitoring and reporting process among different countries and institutions presented coordination challenges due to different reporting timelines, different standards of data management, variability in capacity for managing results, and potential conflicts in mandates. But more important, that the process in instilling a results-based management approach served to move us beyond these challenges and to galvanize national, regional, and international actors in support of the delivery of the regional strategy. That the stakeholder engagement and capacity development in the results-based management process helped to achieve buy-in, even if slow, and that the evidence generated increased the demand for and use of lessons in decision-making by the policymakers, thereby deepening political support for the process. That with finite or declining resources, better resource utilization and coordination could be achieved through the principles of management for results. The horizontal and vertical linkages across institutions and at the local level resulted in greater transparency, accountability within the system of stakeholders. Fourthly, that medium, long-term social changes cannot be predicted, controlled, or reduced to a single overarching problem. It only provided a simplified basis of understanding complex and multidimensional problems. And lastly, that innovation can serve as a platform for increasing stakeholder buy-in. The recovery from COVID-19 is accelerating the ushering in of the fourth industrial revolution. This new digital era presents opportunities to leverage technology-based tools to facilitate better monitoring and reporting, but also to better engage our citizens in the process of decision-making around their development. In closing, while it is important to applaud the significant advancement that the Community Renewal Program and its associated monitoring and coordination platforms will bring to efforts to advance community and national development, we must note that partnerships and cross-sectoral engagements has the ability to bring development opportunities to those most left behind. It is also important that we factor in the reality that not everyone will share the same interests, and that there are political issues that we have to navigate along the way. Additionally, it is necessary to focus attention less on specific actors' actions and more on people we are trying to help through ongoing dialogue with them and harvesting and sharing learning to identify new and innovative ways of securing program objectives. I want to leave you with a few takeaways. One, that results-based management has the potential to produce savings in an environment marked by depleting or competing demands for limited resources. It will also promote good governance and focus stakeholders' attention on delivering key results. Two, that changing from business as usual mindset to a people-centered approach to planning, budgeting, and management for results and impact takes a longer time to achieve given the implications for accountability and transparency. It will require investments in capacity building, systems reengineering, ownership and commitment at the highest levels, and incentivize where possible. That an RBM approach has the potential to leverage greater investments into programming through the generation of evidence and lessons, which can inform ongoing programming implementation or aid in the design of complementary interventions. And lastly, that people-centered policy, planning, and management for results and impact is not about the use of a tool or tools, but about a mindset change, shifting from a focus on what we did to a focus on what has come out of what we did. How have we changed the lives of the people for the better? I thank you for your attention and offer my best wishes for the successful delivery of the remainder of this virtual high-level event on the impact of transformational partnership and the launch of Jamaica's Community Renewal Index.
You've just heard from Mr. Ronald Jackson. He's the head of the UNDP Disaster Risk Reduction and Recovery Team in Switzerland. Thank you so much, Sir Jackson. The first poll is now closed, yes, and we will now be introducing our second poll question based on what you've learned in our discussions so far. Please give us your opinions. Make sure you also send in your questions. Our first poll question, it was: one critical success factor for inclusive people-centered development is for national monitoring and evaluation systems to be developed by one, each involved by the ministry, department, agency, and donor, ministries only, or all ministries, departments, agencies, donors, and the people who will be directly and indirectly affected by the social interventions, or donors only. The second poll question goes like this: which description of a renewed community speaks the most about you? One that is now safe and crime-free. The other one that now possesses proper social amenities and services such as good roads, good healthcare systems, good schools, police stations, good shopping centers, parks, and so on. The other one that you could look at, one that now has social or community groups actively involved in its development. And one where residents now has a decent standard of living that enables them to live a full and free life that is satisfied. Yeah, so those are the responses that you could look at in your second poll question. Now, the upcoming video will highlight some of the major impacts coming out of the PRP, which enforces or reinforces the values of the results-based management approach.
Pedro River is a productive farming community in southeast St. Anne, where residents know the value of every drop of water.
We are at Bongrong Spring. This is where my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father used to carry water from. From a little baby boy, we have to carry water up here so.
We have to walk here, carry the water on our head. Sometimes the water turn over, we turn over. We have to turn back and go back up at the spring more than 1 or 2 times. Sometimes when we go through this stony place down there, the stone them slippery. Sometimes we slide. Oh, Jesus, we did have it hard. We did have it hard. But thanks be to God. It's over.
In 2005, community members formed the Pedrovian Community Benevolent Society and submitted a project proposal for a water sanitation and supply system to the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, JSIF. JSIF was established in 1996 as part of the government's National Poverty Alleviation Strategy to provide a safety net for persons living in some of Jamaica's most vulnerable communities. In 2000, the Poverty Reduction Program PRP was formed through the support and partnership of the European Union and the Government of Jamaica. And in 2005, the EU provided a grant under the PRP for the construction of the Pedro River water sanitation and supply system.
Then they said to us that we got to give 20% of the cost for the project. They don't donate the cash and we do the labor.
We got support from JSIF, who provide us with training as to how to take care of the system. We got support from a number of agencies. We didn't have a place of our own. So we, as community members, came together and built an office. Then JSIF came in, saw the contribution of the community, and render some assistance in finishing the building, which now holds a computer lab that is equipped with 16 computers. You have persons who give free labor, persons who lend their donkeys when they are not available to give free labor. You have persons who stood as security guards to make sure that the project was successfully done.
We have to build a dam a little bit below the spring, and we take it from there to the tank, then to a chlorinated house where it's chlorinated and then goes into the tank and then distributed to the community.
The Pedro River water supply system currently caters to 88 households, and we give them potable water for domestic as well as agricultural purposes.
It's a good thing for us, and we grow with children now better because they're here before go to school earlier in the morning. All them pit toilet what we used to have in our community, and them there's some things of the past. Better life.
Persons now are building more. There are more businesses like shops, bars in the area now that wasn't here before. You have more young people who are embarking in farming as well, both livestock and catch crop, so it has done a lot.
It has created employment because one, we have a maintenance manager, and two, we have an office clerk who is able to benefit and earn an income from the society. It has been sustainable by far, and we are indeed grateful.
I feel great about the whole process. Being a part of it, even better, because now you won't have persons going to the water actually come to us.
What the water supply has also done is that it has given the community people a bit of empowerment. It has shown that real people in Jamaica, community people, are able to own something and are able to do good at it, because the people in Pedro River, they have been doing a very good job of managing the water supply system, that it has existed for so many years, and that is kudos to them. I would really like to thank JCIF and the European Union for doing this project for us. Pedro River is one of those special places where we come together as a community really to execute a job, and we do it well.
The PRP has made a significant contribution to improving the standard of living of many residents, implementing projects that provide access to roads, health centers, police stations, schools, and integrated community spaces. The Effortville Basic School in Mapen, Clarendon was in dire need of proper accommodation. It had relocated from a church it had outgrown to an unfinished building, which proved to be inadequate and not conducive for learning.
We had a need for a school, and hearing about JCIF and the type of work that they did, the PTA wrote a letter asking for some form of assistance. Thanks be to God, the assistance came, and the project went on very well. The old building was torn down, and then a new building constructed. It was a project with a difference. We didn't have to use watchmen because the community people were the watchmen for the school. And because of the unemployment in the community, men agreed to work 2 days per week and collect their money so that other people could be employed.
They built 4 classrooms, bathroom for the boys, girls separately, a storeroom, and we have another extra bathroom that they can bathe. Then we have a staff room, and then we have a sick bay. Then we have the area where the children have their lunch. But because the school population was growing, we eventually have to use that area for another classroom. Also, a kitchen was on it, and we have a pantry, and everything was okay. And they donated chairs and desks, both for the teachers and the children. The community now, they did the play area, and the equipment was sent to us. And they do the tiling. They were the ones donate. They did the tiling, the floor, free of cost. Yes, the kitchen, the bathroom, everywhere, the corridor, and the classroom, the community. Yes, and the fencing, it was a member of the community who came in and assist.
The teachers can now teach without distraction. We can close our doors because each classroom has a door. We can teach in comfort. The children can learn in comfort. And it has really been an experience. And we just want to thank JSIF, because without them coming on board to assist, then we would still be here, children wondering how we could meet the children for them to learn better.
The Poverty Reduction Program worked to enhance the quality of life for residents of volatile communities, developing infrastructure and contributing to their economic well-being. The PRP sought to empower them through human development and social services such as training in life skills and dispute resolution, reading and literacy programs, on-the-job placement, and vocational and tertiary scholarship awards.
I am Ardis Paulin, a past beneficiary from JSIF's Poverty Reduction Program. I grew up in a community that is known as Parade Gardens, a very volatile and criminal area in a sense. With that being said, I ended up losing my mom at the age of 13 to the hands of criminals for no apparent reason. She was murdered brutally. A few weeks before my mom died, I made a promise to her that I would not become a part of the whole Garrison statistics, but I would rise above the odds and make something of my life for my generation to come. My educational goal, in a sense, is to become a chartered certified accountant, and I got my first experience within the accounting department at the Ligini Club due to being a part of the JSIF's PRP internship. From there, I was able to use the monetary benefit that I received from the internship to pay my tuition. And I felt really elated when I got the call to say that, I'm a part of this internship program, because I knew that that was my opportunity to rise above the odds and to fulfill the promise. The ultimate difference that it has actually made is to allow me to propel further within my career and educationally. Because of the internship and more specifically the scholarship that I received back in 2018, I was able to finish my undergraduate studies and graduated in November of that year. With that graduation, I was offered a job at the British Caribbean Insurance Company, to which I am still at currently. Well, I am one that believes that an opportunity, in a sense, can go a long way for every individual who is blessed enough to get it. So I believe that the program, in a sense, is a very good one. And for me personally, as I said, that was my starting point to excel in life. So I should take this starting point that I have and push it further by accomplishing my goals and dream. On that note, I'm furthering my education, currently pursuing a CCA studies, where when I finish, I would actually get the certification that I need to become a chartered certified accountant here in Jamaica. I'd like to say thanks to all the contributing members of the PRP program, the European Union, and Jamaica Social Investment Fund. Thanks for giving not just me an opportunity, but many other inner city youth that desperately needed that opportunity to make something of themselves and for their generation.
The Poverty Reduction Program builds and strengthens the capacity of partnering NGOs, community-based organizations, and social enterprises, providing support through training and the provision of grants.
Superior Crafts and More was set up to help blind and visually impaired persons to be independent. We train persons in doing cord, cane, and wicker furniture. Right now, we have 22 persons overall, 16 on staff.
Because of the training,
that they had recently, because of the donation from EU and JCF, they were able to start new design.
JCF has helped us to get this shed. This is the area that we trained in doing wicker, furniture, chairs, baskets, and just about anything that a customer order, we do it right here.
This shed was the biggest thing because they were out under the element. So what that used to do, slow down production. So this shed is a great help now. No stoppage of work anymore. So that has contributed greatly to their finance.
We now have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page through the help of JCF. We also have, as you can see, our new sign. So that's something we didn't have before, and they help us to know a little more about business.
So what this does for us now is that persons are employed. They can come out on a daily basis and person can see that you have a work. It's not only to be out there by stretching out your hands for something. So what this project has done is actually teach us to fish instead of giving a fish.
Portmore Self-Help Disability Organization caters to all persons with various kinds of disability, of all ages, young adults, elderly, children. You can have persons who are deaf, visually impaired, physical disabled, mentally, intellectual, Down syndrome, just about all persons are combined disabilities. We go out to the different communities at Citizen Association group and we speak, and we advocate in Portmore to ensure that Portmore becomes a community, a friendly, accessible community for all persons. We provide counseling. We have a counselor, she herself is disabled. We provide our work from home program because as an organization we try to meet the needs of all our members. The poverty reduction program, of course with the EU, played an important role with the Portmore Self-Help Disability Organization. It was a monetary assistance. So while already we had a center, JCF came in and expanded that center for us, expanded the program for us, and of course enable us to carry out the training with these special persons who we advocate for. We have soap making, we make natural soaps, right? We have slippers making, we do slippers. We do pillows, we do cushions, we do sheet sets, we do jewelry. And our new flagship project is molding. Through the partnership with JCF, we have a store that we open Monday to Friday where the community and other persons come in to purchase these stuff locally that were made by persons with disability. And of course, the community is grateful for that and they do support us. And at this time, I would like to thank the EU and the Jamaica Social Investment for the input, for the partnership that they have given the Portmore Self-Help Disability Organization. We couldn't have done it without you, and we are truly grateful.
I would say the greatest impact of the PRP has been the beneficiaries and the communities at large. Their increased ability to self-actualize while partnering with JCF to implement their respective projects and their ability to maintain the facilities and the programs long after our intervention has been complete. We believe that our programs are impactful. The real impact is when the beneficiaries share the positive changes that our programs have made in their lives and the livelihoods of their communities. As the PRP comes to a close with the fourth and final cycle, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the European Union for their partnership over the last 20 years. I would like to thank them for entrusting us with such an impactful program, and I'd like to thank the Government of Jamaica for their governance with us over the last period of the program.
The Poverty Reduction Program has yielded remarkable results in the lives of some of the poorest Jamaicans since it started in 2001. The program's people-centered approach has contributed to the empowerment of beneficiaries and a high degree of ownership and commitment. It demonstrates that initiatives designed and implemented in this way can be sustained through education, skills building, and income generation, resulting in improved standards of living. The Poverty Reduction Programme has been a rewarding experience for the European Union. As the programme moved across the country, we found people full of drive, creativity, and a willingness to tackle individual and community challenges. This paved the way for the Poverty Reduction Programme to help residents achieve their own goals, developed in partnership with the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Social Development Commission, and Jamaica's Social Investment Fund, the latter being the PRP's implementing agency. The European Union is proud of what we've been able to achieve over the past 20 years, together with the government and with the people of Jamaica.
So you've just seen some of the high impact outcomes of the Poverty Reduction Program, reinforcing the value of results-based management approach. According to the United Nations, community development is a process where people come together to take action on what is important to them. At its heart, community development is rooted in the belief that all people should have access to health, well-being, health, justice, and opportunity. Right here in Jamaica, the government, through the Planning Institute of Jamaica, defines a renewed community as one that is secure, cohesive, prosperous, with healthy environments and access to justice. Let's hear what a renewed community means for some Jamaicans in the community. Their views will be followed immediately by an overview of the PIOJ's Community Renewal Program.
A renewed community is one where residents contribute to and benefit from both economical development and social transformation. The main issue that I've really realized in my community over the years is the upsurge of crime and violence. One might ask, how do we change this? I think personally that we ought to change the mindset of persons towards security forces and change their mind towards themselves. If one can acknowledge who they are and what they're about, I think their approaches will be way different. So change your mind, change your thinking, change your behavior.
A renewed community is one in which residents and other stakeholders actively participate in addressing the developmental challenges affecting the community. The main issue affecting my community is the low active participation in the developmental work. Despite effort by many organizations in Jamaica to build the capacity and the activities of communities, in particular those in Kingston and St. Andrew, regrettably, not all of them are at the level to get their community renewed. The work of the Social Development Commission, the PIOJ, CRP, JSIF, and other organizations in Kingston and St. Andrew work very hard with communities. But we have to take communities where they are and move them up the chain. So we have to know where they are today, and as we deliver intervention to change their lives, sometime in the future we measure again and see what progress they have made. We all want our community to be renewed. We love to see the lives of our community members change. We love to see the lives of families, yes, families, youth, women, the disabled person change. It's a hard task, but sometimes we have to do it. We have to do what is necessary to move every community, not just few, which is difficult because the resources are not there, but we must make it clear to every community that they can one day reap the benefit of their hard work. We have to support all our volunteers, every one of them. Those who attend a meeting once in a year and those who come every time we have a meeting, because that is what builds community. Activity and active participation. And once we can get that right, a lot of our issues will be solved. As long as we can get the people participation in the developmental process, no matter what name you call it, it will be good for Jamaica. It will be good for the world. We take it one community at a time. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Latoya Hansen, and I'm from the Nanaville Uprising Youth Action Club in the Nanaville Gardens community. A renewed community may be defined as a community where environmental, economic, and social development is taking place on an ongoing basis. Some of the main issue that is impeding my community is the lack of unity and collaborative effort. We all need to work together towards a common goal in order to uplift the community. So we need to put in different social programs for the youth and even parental programs so that we can help move our youth and our children towards a better future. And that's what I think is lacking in my community.
Hi, my name is Arana Anderson and I am from Trenchtown, where I work with the Trenchtown CDC as an administrator. The main issue impacting my community's progress towards renewal is crime and violence. This prevents students from attending classes which keep educational levels low. It also reduces people's participation in interventions which affects the success of the project. As a result, community development is hampered.
My name is Samika Prendergast. I am a student and I am also a member of the Trenchtown Community Development Committee. A renewed community is a community that has taken on its challenges and made improvement in the areas that would have impaired its developmentality. The main issue that is impeding development in my community is poverty. I say this because poverty impacts education. Parents do not have the money to send the children to school regularly, and especially during the COVID-19, where school is available online, they do not have the funds to purchase the devices, nor do they have the funds to pay for internet to allow the children to have access to online classes as they should.
Community Renewal Program, CRP, was established in 2011 as a multi-level integrated intervention for coordinating and enhancing service delivery among 100 of the most volatile and vulnerable communities in Jamaica. The selected communities are from the 5 parishes that have sustained the highest murder rates over the last 10 years. These are St. James, Clarendon, St. Catherine, Kingston, and St. Andrew. Goal of the CRP. The goal of the CRP is that citizens are empowered to live full and satisfied lives and have transformed their volatile and vulnerable communities into secure, cohesive, just, prosperous, and healthy environments. Objectives of the Community Renewal Program. The primary objective of the CRP is to achieve sustainable positive change among the targeted communities by harnessing multiple interventions around 6 strategic components. These are social transformation, socio-economic development, governance, youth development, physical transformation, and safety and justice. The CRP Secretariat coordinates the implementation and monitoring of partner activities in keeping with its strategic objectives. These are building partnerships among state and non-state entities to ensure collaboration, coordinating and harmonizing development partners, state and non-state entities and institutions to prevent duplication and maximize the impact of interventions, mobilizing resources to fill gaps, designing and supporting catalytic interventions and policies to address critical needs and gaps in CRP target communities.
The Planning Institute of Jamaica, through the Community Renewal Program,
continues to support the process of policy formulation and development through the coordination and implementation of policy activities under the economic sector. Notably, in 2016, a policy committee was established within the PIOJ to facilitate stakeholder discussions and to advocate for the development of a legislative framework for the social enterprise sector in Jamaica. This advocacy was successful and led to the CRP's participation in the review and update of the MSME and entrepreneurship policy, resulting in the development and inclusion of a new chapter on social value creation being added, which received cabinet approval in 2018. The CRP now chairs the Social Enterprise Working Group, a subgroup of the National Policy Implementation Committee.
Designing and supporting best practice interventions, monitoring and evaluating, and researching and analyzing data to provide information for better program design.
To strengthen the M&E capacity of the Community Renewal Program, a web-based monitoring and evaluation database was introduced in July 2020. This system is intended to be used by CRP implementing partners to plan, track, measure, and report on the performance of interventions under the CRP umbrella. Another component of the system is an online platform which will become available in early 2021. This platform will provide data and information on CRP target communities, interventions, and results with a view to promoting evidence-based decision-making among stakeholders.
Coordination and collaboration among the agencies within each parish is facilitated by the Parish Interagency Networks established by the Social Development Commission. The ultimate purpose of the CRP is to contribute to inclusive growth and equitable national development by fostering the socio-economic well-being and enhancing the quality of the lives of residents of volatile and vulnerable communities. Here's Charles Clayton as he explains our theory of change.
The CRP recognizes that agencies working by themselves in silos are unable to accomplish the kind of change that is needed in the spaces where we have social problems of the kind that we are addressing. So if we expect communities to be able to be transformed into spaces where people can operate in a mainstream society, then we have to be more targeted in our approach. We have to target the issues that need to be addressed more intelligently, and we need to work together in an uncompeting kind of way.
For more information on the CRP, visit the PIOJ's website or email us at info@pioj.gov.jm.
Monitoring and evaluation is an important component of results-based management and people-centered development. Mrs. Marsha Watson-Hilton, Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist with the Community Renewal Program, now joins us to share an important innovation that was recently developed to improve access to empirical data for decision-making. It's called the Community Renewal Index. How are you, Marsha?
I'm good, Darian.
Tell me about this Community Renewal Index.
Well, the Community Renewal Index is a single number that establishes the ranking or position of communities along a renewal continuum from 0, least renewed, to 100, most renewed. It was designed specifically for our volatile and vulnerable communities to enable us to ascertain whether or not they're moving towards renewal status. Today, we're very pleased to launch the Community Renewal Index, and I'm pleased to invite our audience to view this video.
The Planning Institute of Jamaica is very pleased to launch Jamaica's Community Renewal Index.
Central to the functioning of the PIOJ is its mandate to provide evidence-based policy advice and recommendations to the government and society at large, particularly for planning and program design. This requires ongoing access to credible data on which to base decision-making. Unfortunately, data at the community level has never been consistently available and often not with the level of detail required to make certain policy decisions. It is in this context that we regard the launch of the CRI as a pivotal milestone, not only for the functioning of our organization, but as a tool that may be used among the government, private sector, NGOs, and international development partners to achieve more effective and better targeted interventions in communities across Jamaica. This should contribute significantly to the wider development of Jamaica as it supports the Leaving No One Behind agenda.
The Community Renewal Index is a single number that establishes the ranking or position of communities on a renewal continuum, from 0, least renewed, to 100, most renewed. It consists of 5 dimensions and 14 component indicators, which provide information on how secure, prosperous, cohesive, just, and healthy our communities are. The index is calculated as the weight sum of the 5 dimensions. This produces a score which becomes the basis for the ranking of communities relative to each other. The index is to be produced every 2 years.
While Jamaica is not lacking in national level data, community level data has only been available in a more limited sense, lacking both the currency and level of detail that is required to make decisions on policy and program design. In addition, many agencies have found it challenging to be able to measure their outputs and connect these outputs to the community level development and even more so to the national level. Our third point is that we have never been able to properly measure what a developed community looks like and how we can compare communities against communities using standardized data. It is against this background that the Community Renewal Program embarked on a process of developing a tool that would be able to provide measurement in these areas. And so the result was the development of the Community Renewal Index that we are launching today.
In 2020, the index was applied to 17 communities in Kingston and St. Andrew. The results highlight the current renewal status of each community and underscore the collective efforts and contribution of state and non-state actors to this transformation. There is, however, much work to be done to close the gap between the current and the desired renewal status. For example, the findings reveal weaknesses across all communities in the area of prosperity and some of its component indicators. These include educational attainment and internet access.
The Community Renewal Index provides a baseline of information with respect to how safe, cohesive, healthy, and prosperous our communities are. I believe this information is very vital and can really advance the development of the said communities.
Springfield Gardens has the highest score on the index, and that is something that we are proud of. However, there is still a lot that we need to do to make the community better. The Community Renewal Index provides us with the evidence that we need to support better planning for our community.
We want our community to be a place of choice to live and to raise our families. The Community Renewal Index is a step in the right direction in terms of the information it provides and how near or how far we are from this vision.
Our community stand to benefit from the Community Renewal Index, which was done by the Planning Institute of Jamaica and the Community Renewal team. On behalf of all the communities, I wish to thank them for this initiative. I believe it is useful in that it can help with reducing the gaps that exist in security, health, education, infrastructural development, and poverty.
The Community Renewal Index, developed by the Planning Institute of Jamaica, provides an added dimension as to how we can use empirical data to target communities, prioritize their development challenges, and to ensure that our communities are renewed or transformed from one level to another along the development continuum. I do believe that it will be used by all our ministries, departments, and agencies, including the SDC, to help us to address or redress the challenges that our communities face It also provides a framework for us to work together to monitor and evaluate the development status of our communities and to ensure that the investment we make in community development is really sustainable.
The Community Renewal Index has really provided the Social Development Commission, Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Office with another opportunity to take a deep dive into the developmental challenges that are facing our communities. We're particularly happy to be able to utilize this index, especially in relation to developmental planning and assisting our communities in looking at their priorities and developing and articulating work plans that can address these issues. We at the SDC look forward to this index being developed for more communities, but we're happy where we are starting and look forward to actually using the index in a very results-based, focused environment so that we can advance community development and by extension the development agenda in Jamaica.
Development actors and community residents have the opportunity to use the data to coalesce around a common vision and goal that places communities at the epicenter of development. At this juncture, it is critical that we strengthen our collective actions to empower residents in these excluded spaces to live full and satisfied lives and help transform their communities into secure, prosperous, cohesive, just and healthy environments so that they may become places of choice to live, work, raise families and do business, as together we make Vision 2030 Jamaica a reality.
For more information on the Community Renewal Index, please email us at crp@pioj.gov.jm.
I have a couple more questions from Mrs. Hilton. Let me ask you, the Community Renewal Index was applied in 17 communities. What were some of the main findings?
Okay, thank you, Darian. Before I present the main findings, I want to ensure that our audience has an understanding of some of the key elements that would inform the context within which this renewal index was applied. I want to first establish the definition of a community that was used to inform the Community Renewal Index. And this definition is borrowed from the Social Development Commission, which is the agency in Jamaica with responsibility for community development. And the STC defines a community as a defined geographical area, grouping people based on common ownership of resources or the sharing of social, economic, and cultural facilities, and where residents show regard for themselves as having common objectives, interests, and needs. Just to say that there are 775 communities in Jamaica. Another important element I'd like to share in order for us to contextualize and interpret these findings is that of the 100 most volatile and vulnerable communities in Jamaica, about 43 are from Kingston and St. Andrew. And of the 17 communities that the index was applied to, 11 are among the 25 most volatile and vulnerable communities in Jamaica. In total, however, in total, 15 communities are among the top 50 most volatile and vulnerable communities in Jamaica. This is of the 17 communities, 15 are among this cohort. For context, I would like to also indicate the 17 communities that the index was applied to. These communities are located in the Kingston metropolitan area, and in particular, the downtown and the 3 Miles development area. Now, these are located along the southern crescent of the city. Therefore, if you are traveling from, let's say, the Norman Manley International Airport in Kingston, Jamaica, these are some of the communities that you will pass along the way. A final point to also share is that these communities are contiguous to each other, as you can see on the screen. In terms of the demographic characteristics of these communities, the population size ranges from 1,500 residents in a community to 15,000 residents. But in total, there are an estimated 76,095 residents in these 17 communities. Youth aged 15 to 29 account for approximately 28% of the population, and females and males comprise 51% and 49% respectively of this population. Before I share some of the results, another point I would like us to note is that, as indicated before when the index was launched, the higher the score on the index, the better the community is in terms of its progress towards renewal status. So you will recall that a score of 100 represents the ideal. Another point to note is that we used the 2019 data from our various data sources as the basis for calculating the index. This is very important when we look at the findings and we put them, as I said earlier, within context. The final thing I'd like to note before I get to the main findings is that this version of the index, because it is being applied for the first time, it provides a baseline for us to monitor the progress of these communities towards renewal status. The focus of my presentation, therefore, is on the current renewal status of these 17 communities so that we can understand the gap that exists between this current status and the ideal. Now let's go to our findings. So of the 17 communities that the index was applied to, you'll observe that the majority of these communities are clustering within the 50s. Most of them received scores between 50 and 60. 1 scored below 50, and 4 had scores between 61 and 70. So when we look at this on the renewal continuum, we can conclude that more than 50% of these communities are at the midway point in terms of renewal. And just to highlight some of these communities, the lowest score among the communities was in central downtown, which is primarily a business district. The majority of the communities, as said earlier, are clustering within the 51 to 60 range. And these include Fletcher's Land, Jonestown, Raytown, Seaview Gardens, Majestic Gardens, etc. However, the highest scoring communities are Springfield Gardens, Franklin Town, Hannahtown, and Tivoli Gardens. Now, if we were to take a closer look at the scores specifically for each of these communities, you will see again you will see where the communities are clustering within this range from 51 to 60. The top 3 communities, as indicated earlier, are Springfield Gardens, Franklin Town, and Hannahtown. And when these are viewed on a map, you will see that these communities are, except for Hannahtown, these communities are contiguous to each other. When we take a closer look at the component indicators for each of the 5 dimensions of the index, it allows us to further understand the basis for the dimension scores and ascertain the areas of strength and weakness in the index. So if we look at the dimension scores, we'll start with prosperity. So how prosperous are our 17 communities? Now, I want to firstly describe how the prosperity dimension is measured. The component indicators are employment, education, the non-poor, and internet access. The maximum score for this dimension is 35. And the results indicate that prosperity across all communities is generally low. Of the 4 components, employment, internet access, followed by educational attainment, are among the lowest scoring components. Scores on the non-poor component indicator, however, these scores were relatively high. And I want to also point out, though, that for this indicator, there is considerable variability across the scores in these communities. For the second dimension, security, how secure are our 17 communities? The component indicators are security related to the absence of murders. The second is security related to the absence of other major crimes, and these would exclude murders. And the third is security related to the absence of gangs. and the maximum score for this dimension is 25. Most communities received the highest scores on security related to major crimes, excluding murders. The lowest score across communities was on security related to murders. However, I want us to also note that there is variability in the scores for security related to gangs across all the communities. Of course, among the communities that received the highest scores for the security dimensions, as the graph will show, are Springfield Gardens, Seaview Gardens, and Hannahtown. And among the communities with the lowest security scores are Central Downtown, Parade Gardens, and Trenchtown. In terms of the health and the dimension health and environment, you'll observe from the graph that we use 3 components to determine how healthy our 17 communities are. These include health, housing quality, and the condition of the physical or built environment, which includes the condition of the community infrastructure, social amenities, etc. The maximum score for this dimension is 20. You will observe that the community scores across all components were generally even, with some variability across the scores, mostly for health. 8 of the 17 communities received health and environment scores between 15 and 20. Just over 50% attained scores between 10 and 15. And you will see that of the subcomponents for this dimension, the highest scores were related to the condition of the physical environment. But of course, there is significant variability in this subcomponent. For our 4th dimension, how cohesive our communities are, this is the cohesion dimension. There is one component, and this is community organization. And this looks specifically at the extent to which a community is able to organize itself in a formal, structured, and legitimate way to address developmental challenges facing the community. And the maximum score for this dimension is 10. The findings reveal that 8 of the 17 communities did relatively well, receiving scores between 8 and 10. However, generally, there is some variability in the scores across the communities. For our final dimension, the justice mechanism, there are 2 components. The first is the degree of existence of justice points, and these include those established by the Ministry of Justice here in Jamaica. It includes police stations and local mediation mechanisms, for example, those provided by the Justice of the Peace. The other component indicator is the willingness of residents to report conflicts, interpersonal conflicts, to the police. Now, you will see from the graph that the maximum score, that all communities received high scores for existing justice points. However, the scores on the willingness to report interpersonal conflicts to the police are generally low across all communities. So generally speaking, we can see that the results highlight where the communities are overall in terms of their renewal status. This data for 2020 provides a starting point, as indicated earlier, for understanding what we need to do in order to close the gap between this current status and the ideal status. I want us to also recognize that this is one tool that can be used in conjunction with data from other sources to understand the impact of interventions that are being made by state and non-state actors in community renewal. And we hope that the index itself will catalyze further assessments and evaluations of what is working and what is not working, and why, and under what conditions, so that we will be able to capitalize on these experiences and opportunities. The results point to gaps under each of the 5 dimensions, but more specifically, prosperity. I want us as actors in the developmental space to use this data to really intervene in these communities in a targeted and a sustainable way, and to also ensure that we are results-focused in our efforts. For us to advance progress to renewal, for us to advance the progress, I beg your pardon, of these communities towards renewal status, it requires a focus not only on results, but also on a common way of working, a common framework for planning, a common framework for monitoring and evaluation. And as we look to expand this index to other communities in Jamaica, we look forward to strengthening partnerships in order to ensure that we have a sound and a robust methodology in place so that we can have credible empirical data to inform the strategic decisions that we must make. Thank you, Darian.
Can I ask you, Marsha, just before you wrap up, how can our audience learn a little bit more about the Community Renewal Program, or the Community Renewal Index, rather?
Well, so thank you, Darian. So you can email us at crp@pioj.gov.jm, and we will provide you with information on the methodology that informed the development of the index, as well as share other forms of reports with you, including community level reports and reports by the specific dimensions of the renewal index.
Thank you so much, and I hope that our audience they're putting in their questions, because we're about to get them responded to. We will give you another 5 minutes or so to put your final questions together for the information to come out based on the CRP findings. Now, this is also your final opportunity to take part in the poll. Please note that we will also be having a survey, so you're being invited to take part in that a little bit later on to give us feedback on today's activities. The survey icon may be found at the bottom of your screen, and there will also be some resource documents from today's presentation that you will be able to download. And I'm getting some questions here. But Mr. Clayton, let me probably ask you this particular question. Is it an official policy that the government of Jamaica projects use the RBM approach to help shape national strategies, or can the respective government agencies determine this for themselves?
No, it is a direction that the government is going in now. It would like everybody to actually use this method to be able to monitor, to be able to evaluate how programs are going. And they're moving towards a more integrated system, and more of this will come out as time goes on.
Okay. You're an M&E specialist, so this question should probably go to you. Do all monitoring and evaluation departments of government bodies feed data into the Community Renewal Program as the national coordination body?
So by and large, based on our invitation and based on the MDs, that's the ministries, departments and agencies that align with the CRP, we have that kind of data flow relationship where they are able to share information on the performance of their specific interventions in accordance with this common framework that they have aligned with. So we do have that kind of system in place where we collect information from them on an ongoing basis to ensure that we're able to report on what is happening within these 17 spaces, within these communities.
You want to come in right
Yes,
here?
if you'll permit me to say something. We're part of a larger national coordinating framework. Vision 2030 sits at the top. Then within that space, you have national level coordinating entities. For example, for security, the Ministry of National Security has a secretariat that coordinates information at that level. We participate at a particular level where community-based interventions are taking place. Then we become the mechanism for coordination within the framework of the volatile and vulnerable communities that we have responsibility for.
Marsha, I see a question coming here. I think this you should answer. Can you share the experiences of other countries with the use of the Community Renewal Index? I'm sure Jamaica is not the only country that is using something like this. What's the experience?
Well, interestingly, when we did our research, we weren't able to find an index that measured renewal at the community level. We were able, of course, we know about the Human Development Index, we know about the Social Progress Index. There are so many indices that are out there, but by and large, we were unable to find a tool that was able to measure the community level change. And therefore, we saw this as an opportunity to innovate, to create something that was unique and that could be replicated by other countries.
Okay. Mr. Clayton, you probably can answer this question. How do you find the right balance between resources on measuring, analyzing, reporting, evaluating, etc. on the one side, on the other side, giving the necessary support by aiming them to become self-sustaining?
Well, I should put that in the framework, or in a particular framework.
monitoring and evaluation is not an isolated process. It is part of our loop, which involves program design, program implementation, and monitoring and evaluation is at the back end of program implementation.
Right.
But it must be integrated at the very beginning of program design. So it's a loop. So it's not really that you separate one and put one here and put the other there. But as part of the process, the loop of program design, program implementation, you must have monitoring, evaluation there. After monitoring and evaluation, you have review, and then program modification, then re-implementation. So I think it's a mistake to think of it of dividing the money between this and that as if it's two separate programs. It's integrated into the process.
Talk about monitoring and evaluation. We have Anne Murray, an M&E specialist out of Switzerland. Is she on? Let me ask Anne this particular question. As Mr. Sweeney said in his presentation, we have practiced a bottoms-up approach to development work in Jamaica. How do we distinguish between this bottoms-up approach versus one that is truly inclusive and people-centered?
Okay, well, thank you, Darian. That's an excellent question. And as Mr. Sweeney has said earlier, that bottoms-up approach is not necessarily a different thing from inclusive development. However, inclusive and people-centered development goes a step further. As in the name, bottoms up, right? It shows direction. So when you are getting the participation of communities from the bottom, it goes up. But what about the other direction? Does it also go from top down? So the bottoms-up approach is about participation that's only going one direction, right? And people-centered and inclusive development, it's all directions. It goes up, information, consultation goes up, also flows down. And also, you go beyond just consulting the community or the stakeholders, for example. You have the community or persons involved in the joint development of any program or any plans. And also, when it comes time to make the decision, it's not just at the policy making level, it's not just the government making the decisions. The community or the stakeholders who you got the information from also have a say in the decision that is taken. And sometimes with bottoms-up approaches, the communities are consulted for the information, right? Maybe they are even part of the development of the program, but when critical decisions are to be made, sometimes it's just the donor or the government agencies. So in short, people-centered development put persons, the people at the center in all the process from start to finish. It is also more encompassing because then inclusive development, you're talking about persons who may have a disability, children, the elderly, women, all these vulnerable groups, you're consulting them because you can say, okay, it's a bottoms-up approach originally, but who is giving the information in the community? Is it the usual suspects, for want of a better word, or does everyone in the community have a voice? So inclusive development targets these vulnerable groups as well and bringing the dimension of justice and through democracy in collective decision-making. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And let me just quickly run to you, Marsha. She speaks there about the community intervention and the importance of people in that. You would have picked up a lot of that in the application of the Community Renewal Index. You would have.
Yes. Well, certainly, what we want to always remember is that people are at the heart of this tool. And at the end of the day, the data is supposed to be used to direct investments that are in the interest of these communities and these people, especially these volatile and vulnerable communities that are marginalized, they are at risk. And certainly when you look at the dimensions of the index, again, they're people-centered. You're looking at whether or not people are moving away from a state of poverty, whether or not persons are educated, and whether or not even in terms of the physical environment within these spaces, whether they create that environment for social cohesion, for recreational activities, for persons to feel safe, and for persons to even traverse freely from one district within a community to another. So at the heart of this is really people focusing on the results that will enable us to ascertain whether or not these interventions are impacting them.
Beautiful. We have another question here, and I think this will be more fitting for Mr. Omar Sweeney, Managing Director of JSIF. Mr. Sweeney, the question goes like this. What will happen after the poverty reduction program ends? Are there mechanisms in place to ensure sustainability of the intervention in the communities identified?
Thank you. I think that's a great question in terms of looking at the way forward. And let me say a few things. The poverty reduction program really should have ended with cycle 2. And we were blessed to have 2 additional cycles that probably have gone on more than 10 years. Going forward, though, we will continue to see support for the European Union. I'm confident of that. The budget support program to the government of Jamaica will continue to service programs like this. And what that means is it will allow us to take charge of our affairs in a more centralized way. I mean, I think it's a great discussion about the indices, because when we look at these indices, we have to look across government and look at all the actors. And so having a centralized resource with the Ministry of Finance, per se, through the budget support programs of donors like the EU, will help us to do that. And it's important because we can't be saying to communities to take charge of their own affairs, but as a country, we're not. And so we have to really continue to look forward to that. Now, communities have built their capacity. I mentioned earlier about the fact that these CDCs and benevolent societies are now able to seek their own funding. So we rest confident in their ability to secure and sustain themselves. And this is a big part of why leaving that capacity at the community level will ensure sustainability. So going forward, I think there will be additional donors. I think our traditional donors will continue to support us. Agencies like JSIF, the SDC, the CRP will continue to monitor and proceed. So I think the sustainability framework is well established. The modality will only be different. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Omar Sweeney, there, Managing Director of the Jamaica Social Investment Fund. Well, guess what? The results of the poll questions are in, and we now go to poll question number 1. 91% of the responses chose bullet point 3. And what was the response of bullet point 3? All ministries, departments, agencies, donors, and the people who are directly and indirectly affected by social interventions. So the majority of the responses selected that option. 3% chose number 2, which is the ministries only, and 5% chose number 3. Interesting. Sir Clayton, your response to that reaction to the poll?
Remind me of the question here.
The question is, one critical success factor for inclusive people development is for national monitoring and evaluation systems to be developed by. And 91% of the responses chose all ministries, departments, agencies, and so on.
And it is saying that the message is coming across that it is a unified process where we work together collaboratively. And I think that's a very good thing. You notice a question you asked me at one point, yes, about what are some of the lessons learned from implementing a coordinated approach. Yes. And one of the things that we said was that there needs to be coherence around a common objective and agreement. Cohesion was the word I used. Agreement that this is a necessary process. So the people are saying that it is a necessary process and that they're recognizing that working in silos has never really worked to achieve what we want. So it's a very good space to be in my mind.
Marsha, you would echo those sentiments. Tell me why.
Well, certainly when we think of critical success factors, you're looking at what will create the enabling environment for us to achieve specific outcomes. And it is very important to have those who are the doers to have a say in the process and to also help to drive the process, improve the process so that we are able to see those tangible results, within the specified time frame.
Interesting. Now, the results of the second poll question is in, and this is a second poll question. Which description of a renewed community speaks to you the most? And here are the responses. 10% which description of a renewed community speaks most to you? Safe from crime and violence, 10%. one that possesses proper social amenities and good roads, good health, schools, police stations, shopping, and so on, that received 24%. One that now has social community groups actively involved in its development, 24%, Mr. Clayton. But the one that had the most responses was this one, where residents now have a decent standard of living that enables them to live full and satisfied lives. Your response?
Well, I'm very happy for that, because the people-centeredness means that it's not the material things about it, but how people feel about themselves and their spaces. And the material things are supposed to support how people feel, not an end in themselves. So when people say people live full and satisfied life, they are recognizing that the objective of development is for the people, for people to be satisfied. The same development processes that may satisfy someone somewhere else may not be the same processes that satisfies me here. So then by taking things and putting it in a particular space without consulting how people feel about it, you're actually missing the moat. So the people are speaking and they're saying, how I feel about my space is what counts. And we agree with that, because that really aligns with the goal that we have for
serious alignment there. Marsha, this question from Damon Williams: how is the CRI being used to coordinate efforts among state and international development agencies?
Well, certainly what we're hoping to do, and we have already started the conversation, is to highlight, of course, the current status of these communities with respect to renewal, but more importantly for us to identify where the gaps are and in what areas. So for example, prosperity is weakest, it's the weakest dimension. And when you look at the subcomponents of prosperity, we see educational attainment being among the weakest, internet access, especially in this age where within the COVID-19 pandemic, it's all exactly. So what it does is that it allows us to focus on the areas that need to be prioritized, the areas that are to be invested in, and where the most of the resources need to go. And by having that conversation among our state and non-state actors, we can converge around a common goal, we can coalesce around a common agenda that will enable these communities to move closer to their renewal status.
Well, look at this question. How does the CRI considers quality affordable housing? Because that feeds into the whole prosperity index as well.
Yes.
How do you respond to that?
So one of the dimensions of the index is health and environment. And one of the subcomponents is, of course, the housing quality index, which is looking at the quality of the housing infrastructure, the housing stock within the community. And in this way, we're able to, everyone wants to live in a house that is, it meets a particular standard, not just any standard. And so in order to move communities towards that point where we can say, okay, where residents can feel satisfied that they're living in a house that meets these particular standards in terms of the physical infrastructure, in terms of the amenities inside, access to an exclusive kitchen, piped water inside the house, etc. Residents want to feel that sense of fulfillment, and therefore the index provides us with this opportunity to really see where our communities are in this regard and help them direct the investment to these communities that are lacking to ensure that they have this kind of benefit.
Another question here, and this is from Andre Lynch on the poverty reduction programs. And he's arguing that they ultimately rely on economic development to remain sustainable. How can new monitoring and implementation strategies identify and leverage technology innovators, to boost economic returns on these particular programs?
Well, community development, as I said, is an integrated process, and one of the dimensions is economic development. Economic development is there to sustain the goals and aspirations of people. It's not an end in itself. And in that process of economic development, you have to examine what works for different spaces. Technology and innovation comes into play in the spaces that you're operating and the capacities of the people that are around you. So the development process then must harness all the energies of the communities, including that capacity for innovation and technology. So that's how I would coach it. It's not that you deliberately go in and decide, this is what we're working on now. As a country, you really want to encourage innovation and technology, because that is the basis on which you build your own your own ownership
Yes.
of the development process rather than buying technology. But it is part of a process of people development. People are developed and their capacities work out. And when they identify the spaces and the things they want to work with, you support it and you encourage it. But it is not that you're definitely going to say, we are forcing this on you. This is how we look at it.
Let me throw a cat among the pigeons, so to speak, and this relates to cultural mindset. How do you treat with the mindset of people? Because mindset change is important for this kind of change to make the impact. Marsha, you want to take that one, and then I go to Clayton.
Well, certainly, you have to find the I or the me in the entire process. Yes. So if there isn't that self-agency, that person's willingness to change, to adapt to change, then it means that our interventions would really have no kind of impact.
Precisely.
It's going to be, and what we find sometimes is that various agencies will go into these communities and they will deliver good interventions, but the uptake is low. And so,
and I heard that in one of the responses earlier.
Yes, the uptake is low, and that is not really a good thing for projects, because you want to know that you are delivering a benefit to the residents. But at the end of the day, there has to be a mindset in that aspect, in that respect, for us to see those kinds of changes. And then at the other end of the spectrum is just as I said before, that willingness to change, to adapt. Yes. So if it is that you believe that this intervention will deliver benefits that will position you to live a better life, to gain employment, if you think that the education or the certification you receive will elevate you to a place where you can seek employment or further education, then that kind of mindset, that kind of positive mindset, I think will simulate the kind of willingness and commitment to participate in a meaningful way in these interventions.
Right, so aside from what, and I support Marsha, what Marsha says is that I guess sometimes the tendency is to assume that you know what mindset people should have, and you know what mindset you want to create in them. Well, it's really a process where you work to find out what is inside of people, where they want to go, and you help them to recognize their own capacity to get there. That's what the process is, not really telling them.
It came out in the poll responses as well.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go. So for me, a good people development process tries to bring out what is inside of people and help them to recognize that their capacities are much greater than they may think. Help them to navigate the processes, help them to navigate the spaces. I mean, simple things like working through the country's regulations, working through the institutions that you work with, are things that are alien to some people and that incapacitates people. When we become more familiar with those processes, those spaces, how we can work them through, then we can have more agency, we can have more capacity to do. And I think that is where we really want to work.
All right, thank you so much. You want to final 30 seconds? Let me hear your final thoughts.
Well, just to say that we hope that this presentation, today's presentation, has provided our audience, our viewers, with the opportunity to have a deeper appreciation of the results-based management process, and to also appreciate the role of monitoring and evaluation, access to empirical data as an important cornerstone of decision-making that favor these marginalized communities that we have been investing in for so many years. And the poverty reduction program funded by the European Union is a stellar example of what difference can be made in the lives of these residents when there is that focus on people. People are at the center of the efforts.
Your final thoughts, Mr. Clayton.
Marsha has said it well. I don't know how to gild the lily. All I will say is that I agree with her entirely. And that we are very grateful to the European Union for their intervention in Jamaica. They have been excellent partners, and we have benefited greatly, and particularly in the area of M&D for us.
And certainly you would have gone leap years beyond what you were doing before the last 20 years. So our communities would have been making tremendous strides wherever on the wrong they fall, where marginalization was concerned.
Yes, we have made, and I mean, everything works. As I think Mr. Sweeney said earlier on, community development is not a straight line.
Absolutely.
There are pits and falls, but each one adds to the other one as you go forward. And we learn from the past, so it's like geometric progression. You move slowly, and then it multiplies, and it multiplies afterward, and it's no longer 1 and 2, but it's 1 to 10, then 10 to 40, and that's where we're moving now. to more rapid development as information comes and as technology improves.
There you have it. Thank you so very much. Been a packed morning. You've heard from the EU ambassador to Jamaica. You've heard from the head of the PIOJ, Dr. Wayne Henry. We heard from Mr. Ronald Jackson. We've heard from the stories. We've heard from the communities. Powerful impact in moving communities for better, for communities to be prosperous, for people to be prosperous, so we can have a better Jamaica. Thank you so very much. It has been a wonderful experience. My name is Darian Henry. See you another time. Pleasant viewing. Thanks.